Welcome back to Making Money Matter, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kerry Stevenson, and it's also the Gold News Channel. So I thought it was really important to bring on an independent expert who deals in the wholesale industry for gold. His name is Mark Bainbridge, because we all know that this week there was a lot of hoo-ha on a certain channel. It would be called Four Corners, all about gold. And some of the things that were brought up have got people a little bit confused, including myself. Now, I've known Mark for a number of years. What he doesn't know about precious metals and the gold industry probably isn't worth knowing about. What I like about Mark is he's independent, he understands what's going on, and he talks to a lot of people. So I wanted to bring Mark on so that all of our beautiful audience out there can help to, I guess, demystify and potentially understand a little bit more about what's true, what's not true, and to cut to the heart of the matter. So Mark, great to see you. Thanks for your time. I know you're busy, so really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me. Let's have this little Melbourne, Queensland conversation going on. So no, it's great down here.
All right. Well, listen, I think it's an interesting time in the industry. There are those people that are saying, after watching the expose on Four Corners, that perhaps they don't trust the industry anymore, and perhaps there are some challenges going on in the industry. What's your take on what's going on at the moment?
Well, with anything, I think everybody needs to, really look at stuff and make their own minds up about stuff. Articles or programs like this are trying to make your mind up for you. People have told me their feedback about the piece is that it's a hit piece on gold as such, and it's almost trying to scare people away from basically protecting their wealth from inflation and all these other things, and go to regular Australian dollars. But that view's been actually put to the people who wrote the piece, and they deny that as being their goal. So it's be interesting to see what happens with that. But the key thing that's come out of it is, as this is being re-reported, it's become like Chinese whispers. And every time I see it reported, it says such and such company is diluting their gold. And nothing could be further from the truth. We need to have a look at this word doping and what it actually means. It's a word that has a negative connotation, but it has been a practice that's been around in every refinery that I've visited. And I think if we understand a little bit about why that happens, I think people will chill a bit.
Okay, well, talk to us like we're 5-year-olds, and talk to us about, because doping to me is, you dope a horse, that's bad. And, you take dope,
Yep.
that's not too bad. So when they use the term doping gold, it was an interesting terminology. What does it mean?
Well, you say talk to you like you're a 5-year-old. I'm going to have to talk to you like you're just turned 18, because this is more like under the Responsible Talking About Alcohol Act. So if you've ever had a bottle of whiskey, there are different categories, different qualities, all right? And to get a consistent whiskey, typically you end up with a blended whiskey, because they're taking bits from batch A, bits from batch B, and trying to get to the qualities that they want. Now, when you're digging gold up out of the ground, the stuff that comes with it is always different. And depending on which refining process you use to that batch, you get a different result. So you could use refining approach A and get a purity of 99.3. You use refinery approach A on a different batch of gold, and you get a purity of 99.99. Now, what you can do is you basically, because you're targeting, and in the old days, the target was 99.5%.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you were selling a 400-ounce bar of 99.5% gold, and that's all you're going to get paid for is 400 ounces of 99.5%, but the gold you've got in there is 99.99% pure. You're giving away 2 full ounces of pure gold for nothing, and you're being punished because you've got the best refining process in the world. You're getting 4 nines gold straight away, and I sell it out, but I'm only getting paid for 99.5. But at the same time, because I've got stuff from other mines, the process is only kicking out 99.3% or 99.2%. And what I can do is I can grab those two batches of gold and mix them together in the right ratio so that I hit a nice happy medium that the industry accepts of 99.6%. Now that is the LBMA standard. For a 400-ounce bar, it has to be 99.5% gold purity or above.
So why does it say 49's gold? Because that to me says 99.
49's is a standard above the LBMA requirements. So the LBMA requirements is 99.5%. And it also has, the bar must be between this number of ounces and that number of ounces, and dimensions left, right, all that sort of stuff. And it talks about impurities, which we'll get onto in a little bit. The 99.99% is our standard. It's the standard as retail customers, or when I'm buying from a mint or a refinery, I only accept 49's gold. I don't want to buy an old 400-ounce LBMA bar that's 99.5%, and our customers don't. But internationally traded, that's what they are. The Shanghai Metal Exchange has a different standard, and it accepts 1 kilo bars, which are, significantly smaller, and it wants them to be 99.99% pure, and it wants them to have certain other attributes. So that is nothing to do with the LBMA. It's the Singapore Metal Exchange themselves. So everybody who buys stuff.
You mean Shanghai, not Singapore? Yeah.
Shanghai, yes, actually, you're right. Thanks for that. Yeah. So it's a different thing. But so typically, looking back into the history of doping, it's really just like blending the whiskies together to get the right thing together. So you would have to do that to bring some of your gold up to standard. And to do that, you use some of your higher purity gold to add to that lower standard gold to bring it up. So what they're saying is that Perthmint's diluting gold, for example. But no, what they're doing is they're basically mixing their stuff to get the required bars to meet the specifications of the different markets that they have. So they have a market for 99.5% purity.
Okay.
There's a market in India. India accepts 100-gram bars that are 99.5 or above. They've got a market in Shanghai for kilo bars that are 99.99% pure or above. I'm sorry, you might have had some noise there.
Nope.
No. Yeah. So these different markets require different purities. So the refinery is responsible for mixing the different sources of gold they've got to meet the standards of those markets. Now that process, which could be called blending in whiskey making, in refining, and I've very rarely heard the term, and I've been in refineries a lot. I had to go and ask. Doping is essentially referring to that process, but for gold.
Why the beat up then because I think it's potentially damaged people's perception about whether when they buy gold, are they buying something which is what they think they're buying. And so what I'm feeling is that people say, who can I trust?
Right. So I buy and sell. So I buy from mints all around the world.
Yep.
And refineries all around the world. I buy and sell 99.99% pure gold, and I sell that to my customers, who would be your bullion dealer. I know I sell to some of your bullion dealers that you talk to. That's all I care about. That's all the end customer cares about, is they're getting 99.99% gold. They don't care what the 0.001% is.
No, I agree with that, but how do you know that what you're purchasing is 99.99?
Okay, so I tour facilities. I see the insides. I talk to the people in their labs. They have very extensive testing facilities. Typically, the end customer knows about the XRF machine, which is a machine that you can put the bar on and it'll tell you what it is, and it uses technology known as X-ray fluorescence to do that. But in the refinery, they go to extremes to know how many parts per million of any substance might be in there, and they use chemical titration, they use fire assay, and so they're not relying on one source. They really go deep to determine whether or not the accuracy of what's in there. And that's very important for jewelry making, because some of the things that might find their way into the bar, into those impurities, makes the jewelry making impossible. It means that the ring, once it's poured, will break straight away. So selenium, for example, is one of those impurities that you don't want. If there was one impurity that I would accept, no questions asked, in a bar of gold, it would be silver. And silver is the element that's being questioned by this report. They're saying that there's more than 50 parts per million of silver in this gold bar. But if this is the impurity, I would be happy for those 100 parts per million of impurity, which is all that's accepted, 100 electrons or 100 atoms per million atoms. I'm happy for them all to be silver, because that's what you would want. So the requirement of saying can only have no more than 50 silver ones seems silly to me, because what that means is the rest is going to be copper or other stuff that you don't want, as not as valuable.
Might seem
It
like
seems
a
a
really
crazy
dumb
thing.
question, but why can't we have 100% gold?
So it's the same as trying to prove that there's no unicorns on the planet Earth, because you would have to, in order to prove that, you would have to go to every spot on Earth and check to see if there's a unicorn there.
Okay.
But the problem is, you've got to travel and move, and at the same time as you're moving, the unicorn could be moving. So yeah, it's almost impossible to prove that there is no impurity, because you
Okay.
have to look at every atom out of those
Yeah.
parts per million. The cost of doing that and recording every atom that you checked is ridiculous. So
Okay.
you have to use some testing that you can rely on.
Okay. So it's just basically saying, look, it's pretty much pure gold, but there might be just a little bit of something else in there, but like it's the industry standard, so don't worry about it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. The XRF machine we talked about before cannot tell you anything about this 0.001% impurity. It just tells you it's 99.99% gold. You're good. It's
Okay.
only when you use these really extreme chemical assay techniques with titration and fire assays that you get this extra data. And in this case, the mint in question did all that testing and pays huge close attention to what's there, which is what gives us confidence as a purchaser, a wholesale purchaser from these mints, that what we're buying is good, and then we can stand behind it as we sell it to a bullion retailer, and that retailer trusts it enough to stand behind it to sell it to the retail customer.
Yeah, and it's the retail customer that's our audience out there at the moment, and they're the ones that I want to reassure them that everything's okay. Don't panic. But I want to know,
Yep.
why did this come out now, and why such a beat up? I guess, is there any merit in what they were talking about? They spoke about a bikie coming in and purchasing 10 ounces of gold. Well,
Yeah. So being in the position I am, I get retailers calling me sort of, okay, if company X can mess it up, how do I stop myself from messing it up in terms of managing their customer reporting? So this is all about whether or not the organization complied with their anti-money laundering obligations under AUSTRAC. Now, running a scenario, say, Kerry, you work for AUSTRAC and you're coming and approaching a retailer. I'll be a retailer. I'll be called Bullion Y. And basically you're saying to me, well, we've got evidence that Porky Pig has visited your establishment and he's bought 27 one ounce gold bars, well above the threshold for reporting, and he paid by bank transfer. We've got a statement from Porky. He says that he did this. He says that all you did was you asked for his driver's license, and you didn't perform any background checks. He might have swine flu, for example. Now,
sorry, that was very good.
all right. So my obligations to Austrac, if there's something suspicious about this transaction, I have to report that in what's known as a SMR, or a suspicious matter report, to Austrac. I have to do that, right? If I have a suspicion. Now, if you're asking me about this chap that's come in, and the easiest thing I could do is say, Kerry, it's fine. I did an SMR with Austrac. They know about it. Everything's handled. We've followed the processes. We're good. We can defend ourselves to you. But because you're a reporter, you're not from Austrac itself, I can't tell you that. The only people I can deal with is Austrac.
Oh,
So,
okay.
so if you're a reporter, I can't say, no, we did it. We're good. I can't say that
Why not?
because I'm not allowed to. It's explicitly in the Austrac regulations. As a bullion dealer, I cannot tell the person that he's been reported or any other party except Austrac that a report has happened. So in this case, someone's getting hounded by a reporter saying you didn't do an SMR. I can't say that I did. I can't say,
Why not
I
though?
can't defend
That
myself.
seems a little bit crazy. So basically, they can't defend themselves.
Exactly.
If they've done all the background checks, they actually can't say to said journalist, "We've done exactly what we needed to do." They're not allowed to do that. That seems weird.
It's like a journalist walking up to me and saying, "Hey, have you stopped beating your wife?" Yes or no? It's a silly question. It cannot be defended.
Yeah, yeah. So do you think that they knew that when they asked the question, and then they're therefore by association or by inference, guilty as charged, if you like?
Yeah, look, I don't think they'd really put the research into it that they should have. When I first heard the article was coming, I actually contacted some high-standing Walkley Award-winning journalists who worked for the same programs, both, I mean, the two programs that are involved, and they hadn't been contacted about this, even though they have good knowledge. They would be a great internal person to talk to and check the validity of the story. They knew nothing about it. Nobody like myself had been contacted for comment. I do know that two of the mints had been contacted for comment, but obviously chose not to make a presentation in this time. Look, I think it was like poorly researched. One of the things they did, they spoke to the gentleman with the face tattoos, and they said, they just rang him up and asked him the question. He's obviously like, if why would he give out all this information if he was money laundering or anything like that? I mean, the guy is clearly just buying gold for himself. But at the same time, they don't bother to mention that the particular chap could not have paid by cash because the mint does not accept cash transactions.
Oh, really? Okay.
They stopped that a long time ago. So the only way that he could have made a purchase would be by going through the bank. And at that point, if you're looking at working out where the source of funds were, which would have been a cash deposit into a bank account, the bank is responsible for asking the customer what his source of funds is, not.
There you go. And therein lies the interesting bit, doesn't it, Mark? Because is it the mint's responsibility or is it the bank's responsibility? I suggest it's probably the bank's responsibility.
Yeah, and look, I know from past experience that organisations such as this take their Austrac requirements very seriously, and I know that even though you could argue that it is purely the bank's responsibility to obtain the source of funds information for this particular individual, I would suggest strongly that they have done everything above and beyond what is strictly required of them. But as we said in our little example, even if they did, they couldn't tell anybody they did. They can't defend
Amazing.
themselves.
Yeah. Do you think there's been some damage to the overall industry from something like this? I mean, there was a lot of people contacting me saying, "Oh my goodness, have you seen this particular program?" And I'm like, "Yes, I have." I just wonder, two questions: do you think it's done any damage to the industry? And secondly, why now?
I think short term, yes, it has. But I think long term, what tends to happen is it can actually create a better awareness, and that's what journalism and journalists should do.
Yeah.
They should be out there creating awareness of the difference between currency and money and all this sort of stuff. Now, perhaps somebody's scared, and so they've decided that they need to put a negative campaign out there against utilizing precious metal to protect your wealth, perhaps. But I think uh, if journalists do their job right, uh, then it could be nothing but good for the industry.
So you just said something really key there. You said the difference between money and currency. Now, I've spoken about this before, but I'd like you to tell our audience the difference between money and currency.
Yeah, so currency. Okay, so let's go back to what money is historically. Money is something that you can trade in return for a good or a service, and typically it is a thing, a commodity, or something like that. Uh, and up until August 15th, 1971, worldwide, we had this thing called money. It was the US. It was commodity money. We had a US dollar that was backed by gold and silver, which it now is not. Now, the thing about having your government money uh, backed by something is that it actually limits the availability of this money.
Keeps them honest.
And yeah, it does. So it actually restricts their spending. I haven't got enough to do that. Whereas now, if a government wants to do something and it hasn't got enough money, it just prints it. So, we're looking at people are waking up to this, and we saw with cryptocurrencies and stuff like that, people were seeking another option. And governments around the world were very quick to, whilst pretending to like the idea, close off the ability for anybody to use it. They would close the bank accounts of anybody who was running a crypto company and all this sort of stuff. So there was definitely a campaign against moving towards a Bitcoin standard and all this sort of stuff. I feel there's a campaign against precious metals, or there's definitely a fear amongst politicians that interests will be reined in because they may become restricted by real money in the future.
That's an interesting view. Do you think that, oh, look, I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist or anything like that, Mark, but do you think the timing of this was pretty interesting?
It's I think it's got more to do with timing of other factors, my own internal theories, which I don't really want to air at this point. But as Douglas Adams said, the planet has a lot of problems, but many people have solutions to these problems, but most of these solutions seem to involve the movements of small green pieces of paper. And yeah, so that's it.
Or in the case of Australia, red, pink, purple, yellow, red lobsters, all sorts of things.
I'm seeing a lot of colors floating around.
I want to know from you, Mark, why people should even be interested in gold and or silver at the moment. I mean, what's your view?
Regardless of whether you believe that it is the best thing ever, that's the thing. I'm going to have gold. I'm not going to have dollars. I'm going to move it all in gold. That's not what I preach. I believe in risk management, particularly with my own assets. If people ask me what do I invest in, and they're always surprised when I don't say gold and silver. You've got to be prepared for the fact that you could be wrong, and cover that base. Now, for me, that protecting me against being wrong might be buying real estate, even though I've always said, well, real estate's all the problems associated with that. But for me, I've overexposed to precious metal. I'm overexposed to the Australian dollar. So maybe I need some exposure to something else, just in case I'm wrong. I think I'm right, but I'm not going to risk my family on being right about gold or silver or platinum. Platinum's a good one.
I'll talk about platinum in a minute, but it comes back to what I've said quite often to people, which is don't sell your house and your children and go all in on gold or silver, quite frankly. Diversification is your friend, especially at the moment when things are looking a little bit interesting out there in what I call la-la land these days. And I think diversification is key. And some people say 10% of your wealth in gold. There are others that say, listen, I can't pay the mortgage. Why would I be interested in gold? And my answer to that is be very aware of what I call the tap mentality, which is, get the card, tap away, and you've got what I call leaky buckets. So instead of having leaky buckets, instead of tapping, purchase a little bit of gold. And there's different ways that we can do this. I mean, there's wonderful applications now that technology allows us to, that you don't actually have to go and buy an ounce of gold in one hit, because an ounce of gold in Australia at the moment, I think, is about $2,700. But people can save. They can have a gold saver account with, for example, ABC Bullion, or they can have you move their funny money or their fiat currency using the Rush Gold app.
The Rush stuff is great. The ABC stuff's great. When I ran a bullion retailer back prior to 2016, we had an unallocated program that was great. It was it was really good to offer customers the ability to buy fractional gold and then save it over time, and and also that meant that they could, even if they weren't buying ounces, they were buying lots of little things. You could get the quantity discount. Even though you were buying week by week, at the end of the year, you get the big quantity discount. And it was really good when those, young people predominantly would come in and they'd be so proud when they come and picked up their ounce or their tube of Eagles or all that sort of stuff. So that's my retailer history. But those programs are what, I lived for those. I thought they were great.
You just said something interesting a moment ago, unallocated. There are people out there that go, unallocated, what does that mean? There's allocated, there's unallocated, there's pool allocated. Could you just give us a quick, I guess, again, being
but I haven't spoke about this for a number of years. But the beauty of it is that you can, if you're buying gold and leaving it with a bullion dealer, so just in their safe. So, for example, I might buy an ounce coin and I say, can you store it for me? That gets put in a bag with my name on it, with my invoice number, and stuck in a safe. And I may or may not get charged for it. There are some dealers who don't charge storage fees for short term. And that is called allocated, because that piece of gold is allocated to me. It's not allocated to anyone else. That is allocated to me. Unallocated means, well, it's not. Well, it's the opposite. It's not allocated to me. It's sitting in the safe, but it's not in a bag with my name on it. It's sitting in a computer system in an account, just like a bank account. So banks are really unallocated Australian dollars.
Love that.
Right?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Whereas you could take your wad of cash and stick it in a vault with your name on it, and that becomes allocated. Or if it's under your mattress, it's allocated to your mattress.
Right.
That's exactly what it is. The difference between the other difference is that your unallocated gold is cheaper because you don't have to pay for the premium of getting it made into a coin, which typically on an ounce gold coin has been $100 or whatever for actually that bit. So that and it also means,
and that's, sorry to interrupt you, but that's because of the work that goes into minting coin, putting the stamp on it, creating it. Whereas if it's
all that stuff, yes, selling costs, everything that goes into that,
Okay.
Yep.
So again, we've got the Australian Gold Conference coming up at the end of August. And for all of you listening, you should all be coming to the Australian Gold Conference. The agenda is looking amazing. And you, hopefully, Mark, I'll see you there. So if you've got questions, you can actually go and talk to him face to face. But that aside, what's your big picture view before we wrap this up about what people should be doing right now? People out there that are going, well, I don't know about owning gold or silver. Have you got a view?
Yeah, look, obviously there's always I can't give any sort of advice of a financial nature or any of that kind. I can only tell people what I'm doing.
Right.
And advice that's been given to me, like your question might be how much should I invest in precious metal or invest, where it was I think it's how much of your dollars do you need to get out of the bank and put into something safe that's not going to lose value over time. So that you answered that question first. Okay, I need to not have this many dollars in the bank. Okay, I've got this bunch of cash, these which is essentially now I've got allocated dollars. I'll go and convert those into things that I believe will preserve my wealth over time. So obviously precious metal is something that I'm really, really familiar with. I like to invest, well, I don't invest, just store my wealth in sometimes in coins that I think will raise a bit of a premium for what they are as opposed to what they're made of.
Right.
So I like to buy. If I was living in any country other than Australia, I'd be buying gold sovereigns, hand over fist. But because of the taxation on those, I would typically be buying the Lunar series from the Perth Mint, are my favourites. So there's a plug
Why are
there.
they okay? Why are they your favorites? The Lunar series. What's that?
Because there is a worldwide demand for the designs and the craftsmanships that go into it. You know, the reputation is there. If you actually look on the Four Corners piece,
Yeah.
they interview the guys from Swan Bullion, who are friends of mine, and they go into the Swan Bullion store and they ask to be shown a piece of gold from Perth Mint, and the gentleman describes it. You know, it's 4/9 pure. You know, and the message that comes across is this is why Swan Bullion trusts them. This is why Swan Bullion's customers trust them. You know, it doesn't matter what bullion business you go into in the country, a reputable business, you will find Perth Mint products there.
And at the end
Because
of the
and
day,
you do that worldwide, particularly Germany.
Mhm.
We came back from there about 4 or 5 weeks ago. There was no place that I went to that did not have these, and they love the lunar ones, the ones with the Chinese designs on. The kookaburra and the kangaroo were the easiest pieces that you could sell because everybody wanted them.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to put my money into metal, I want it to have a couple of like I can sell it just for the gold content, or I can sell it to somebody who strongly desires this design that's on it. And so that's what I do. Yeah.
Okay. Before we wrap up, how can people be confident that they're buying from the right place? Because there are reputable dealers, and I would put ABC Bullion, Perth Mint, Ainsley. There's a number of them out there. Bullion Now, there's a number of them out there that are fantastic, and I would suggest people do that. And we actually have a number of bullion dealers on the goldevents.com.au on that website. You can go and have a look at a list of bullion dealers. But should people be cautious about who they deal with?
Like with everything, we know that Mercedes-Benz are a quality car, but you got to be careful who you buy one off.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point, actually. Somebody
Yeah.
bought my Mercedes for $1,000 because I knew it was dodgy.
Luckily, you're not going to. Luckily, it's a lot easier to find the provenance of the institution you're dealing with in Australia. You can go onto Perth Mint's website, get a list of authorised distributors. You
Right.
can go onto the ABC website, and they, I believe, have a list of authorised distributors as well.
Right.
So just start there. go straight to the source of the information. There's great resources out there to talk to other people who are in the same bucket as you. Plug for a group that I'm involved in. There is a group that meets up in Melbourne every 3 months here in the city, and it's just person to person catch up, and that's a great venue to learn about this stuff and get a network of other people who know about this stuff and just teach with it, talk to each other, and this stuff happens in Sydney. It happens up in Brisbane as well. So keep your eye out on that stuff. Yeah. So yeah, we'd love to see you at one. Let's look at May, possibly first half of May here in Melbourne. But yeah, no, that's the great place to get the information out of. Yeah, always ask the questions.
And get educated. Get educated.
Yeah, that's it.
All right, final comments from you, Mark, and then we better wrap it up. But I just really wanted to bring you on because I know as an independent source of knowledge, I wanted to make sure that people didn't freak out. And this is why I tell people, don't necessarily go and listen to mainstream media because you're not getting the full picture. Last comments to you, Mark.
Yeah, I'm going back to Douglas Adams then. Don't panic. It's all good.
That's all good. It's all good. And at the end of the day, diversification is your friend. None of this is investment advice, ladies and gentlemen. Please go and do your own research. Come along to the Australian Gold Conference. Tickets are on sale right now at goldevents.com.au. We've got a terrific lineup there, and you will meet other people that are new to the sector, but other ones that have been around for a while. And that's where you can learn and engage and understand. And at the end of the day, what we care about is how you can not only grow your wealth, but more importantly, protect it in the long run. Mark Bainbridge, thanks so much for joining me on Making Money Matter.
Thanks for having me. Bye, everybody.